My entitled wife vanished after what she called a girl's trip. Years later, she showed up on my doorstep holding a baby, and that's when I made sure her entire world came crashing down. You know how people always say, "I never saw it coming." Yeah, that was me exactly. My wife and I had been together for about 4 years, and we were married for all of them. In my head, everything between us felt solid. I truly believed we had something good. We had plans, real plans, a whole future laid out step by step. And for the most part, I honestly thought we were completely on the same page. Here's the thing though, we both wanted kids. At least, that's what I believed at the time. Not long after we got married, we started having serious conversations about it. She used to talk all the time about wanting 2, maybe 3 kids. She'd go on and on about baby names, how we'd set up the nursery, what kind of life we'd build as a family, the whole picture. Sometimes she'd just sit there scrolling through baby clothes online or looking at different gadgets for newborns, already planning ahead like it was right around the corner. Talking about it became our thing. It brought us closer, gave us something to look forward to together. So yeah, we were excited. We were ready to start that next chapter, and honestly, everything felt perfect at the time. Then reality hit us, and it hit hard. After a few months of trying with no luck, we decided to see a doctor and figure out what was going on. Long story short, the problem was me. My numbers were way too low, and the doctor basically told us that having kids naturally was extremely unlikely. Hearing that felt like getting punched straight in the gut. I felt completely worthless. All those plans we'd been dreaming about, gone. Just like that. It hit me harder than I expected. Way harder. I ended up in a really dark place for a while. Eventually, therapy helped me get back on my feet, but in the beginning, I was a mess. No other way to put it. At first, she seemed supportive. She kept telling me it didn't matter, that she'd be happy even if it was just the 2 of us. But even then, something about the way she said it didn't sit right with me. It felt like she let go of the idea way too quickly. One moment she was obsessed with starting a family, and the next, she was acting like she never needed kids at all. And look, I get it, people change their minds. That happens. But this felt different. It felt off. She went from daydreaming about baby names to completely avoiding the topic altogether. And it wasn't just that, it was like she started looking at me differently too. Out of nowhere, she began making little comments, small digs that she'd never made before. Things about how I wasn't taking care of myself, how I should probably get in better shape, or be more productive around the house. Yeah, maybe I'd gained a bit of weight, but it felt like she was just looking for reasons to blame me for everything. When I finally confronted her and asked what was going on, she brushed it off like it was nothing. Told me I was imagining things. Said I was just being too sensitive. But I knew better. The woman I married, the one who used to sit with me for hours talking about our future, she wasn't the same anymore. She wasn't outright cruel or anything like that, but there was this coldness to her, like she'd already checked out emotionally and was just going through the motions. And over time, I guess I started believing her when she said everything was fine. I stopped pushing. I didn't want to come off insecure or needy. So I just let it go. A few years passed, and we basically fell into this routine where we were just existing day by day. We barely talked about anything that actually mattered. It felt less like a marriage and more like we were just roommates sharing the same space. I tried bringing up other options, adoption, surrogacy, anything, but every time I did, she shut it down immediately. Said she didn't even want to think about it. She'd tell me, "I'm happy as long as we're together," but honestly, I never fully believed that. It felt more like she was trying to convince herself than me. Then one day, completely out of nowhere, she told me she wanted to go on a girls' trip. Now, that part wasn't unusual. She'd gone on trips with her friends before, and I'd always supported her. We were living in Brighton at the time, and she'd been talking for a while about wanting to visit America with her friends. So I didn't think twice about it. We'd built trust over the years, or at least I thought we had. I helped her pack, made sure she had everything she needed. Then I drove her to the airport myself. Right before she left, she turned to me and said, "Thank you for being so supportive." I remember thinking that was a little strange. I mean, it's not like I'd done anything out of the ordinary. But she sounded sincere, so I didn't question it. I just assumed she was being appreciative. That night, I stayed up waiting so I could call her after she landed. Her flight was supposed to be around 9 hours, so I kept myself busy, watching TV, checking the time, just waiting for that message to come through. When I saw that her flight had landed, I called her right away. The phone just rang, and rang, and rang. No answer. I figured she was probably exhausted. Maybe she got to her hotel and passed out. So I didn't think too much of it at first. But then morning came, and still nothing. That's when this uneasy feeling started creeping in, like a knot forming in my stomach that wouldn't go away. I tried calling again, sent a few texts, thought maybe her phone was on silent or she was just busy, but after a few more hours of complete silence, I started to panic. I called her sister, hoping maybe she'd heard from her. Nothing. At that point, I was seriously freaking out. So I started calling her friends, the ones she was supposedly on the trip with, thinking maybe something had happened or she just hadn't had the chance to check in. But when I got them on the phone, they were confused. They weren't in America. They weren't on any trip. They were back home, sitting at a cafe a couple blocks away. That's when everything hit me all at once. She wasn't on a girl's trip. She wasn't with her friends. She hadn't gone anywhere with anyone. She was just gone. I sat there holding my phone, and it honestly felt like the ground dropped out from under me. None of it made sense. Why would she lie like that? Why would she just disappear without saying a word? I tried to come up with explanations. Maybe she missed a flight. Maybe there was an emergency. Maybe something happened, and she couldn't call. But deep down, I already knew the truth. This wasn't an accident. She planned all of it. The trip, the lie, even that thank you for being supportive before she left. It was all part of whatever she'd been setting up behind my back. And I had no idea what to do. It felt like I was stuck in some kind of nightmare I couldn't wake up from. This wasn't the woman I married anymore. This was someone I didn't even recognize. And suddenly, all the pieces started falling into place. The distance, the coldness, the way she stopped talking about our future, those little comments about my looks and my health. She'd been pulling away for a long time. I just didn't see it. Or maybe, I didn't want to. That night, I just sat there, staring at my phone, waiting for something, a text, a call, any kind of sign. But nothing came. And deep down, I already knew it wasn't going to. The next morning, I woke up and just lay there, eyes fixed on the ceiling, hoping maybe, just maybe, it had all been some kind of messed up dream. But her side of the bed was empty. And that's when reality hit me all over again. She was gone. Not temporarily. Not by accident. She had packed up her things and disappeared. All those excuses I'd made the night before. Maybe her flight got delayed. Maybe her phone died. They didn't hold up anymore. It was clear. She planned this. She wanted out. The first few days, I was completely in denial. I kept calling her over and over, hoping she'd finally pick up, hoping I'd hear her voice and get some kind of explanation. I even left voicemails, even though half the time I didn't know what I was saying. I just kept talking, hoping something, anything, would reach her. But all I got back was silence. And somehow, that silence made everything worse. It felt like I'd been left alone to figure it all out, with no answers, no closure, like I'd been a stranger to her the whole time. At first, her family was just as shocked as I was. Her mom had no idea about any of this. She hadn't heard from her either. I found myself going over there constantly, just trying to make sense of it all, hoping someone had answers. I think they felt sorry for me. Her mom would let me stay over sometimes, especially on nights when I couldn't handle being alone. She'd cook for me when I didn't even have the energy to feed myself. Sometimes we'd sit and talk for hours, going over every little detail that didn't add up, trying to piece together how everything fell apart so suddenly. And other times, I'd just sit there in silence, completely numb. My emotions were all over the place. Anger, sadness, guilt. It was like I couldn't settle on just one. I kept asking myself what I did wrong. Was there something I missed? Did I not give her enough attention? Was there some moment where I could have changed things? I'd replay conversations in my head, go back over every argument, every small moment, trying to figure out what pushed her to leave. I kept thinking about how I could have saved the marriage, what I should have done differently. I know it sounds obsessive, but I couldn't stop. It felt like if I could just find the answer, I could somehow fix everything. But I couldn't. I barely ate. I barely slept. Even my work started falling apart. People around me noticed. They'd ask if I was okay, and I'd just brush it off, say I was dealing with some personal stuff. The truth was, I was embarrassed. I didn't want to admit that my wife had left me without a single word. Eventually, I opened up to a couple of close friends. They tried to help the best they could, dragging me out of the house, getting me to hang out, trying to keep my mind off things. But even when I was with them, I wasn't really there. My mind was always somewhere else, stuck on her, wondering where she was, what she was doing, and why I wasn't enough for her to stay. One of the hardest parts was dealing with people who had no idea what happened. Neighbors, family friends, even old co-workers would casually ask, "How's married life?" Or "How's your wife doing?" And every time, it felt like reopening a wound that hadn't healed yet. I didn't have the courage to tell them the truth. So I'd smile, pretend everything was fine, and move on. But every time I lied like that, it felt heavier. Like I was carrying something I couldn't put down. Eventually, I realized I couldn't keep going like that. Therapy ended up being the thing that finally helped. I'd never been to therapy before, but after a few months of barely holding it together, I knew I couldn't do it alone anymore. So I found a therapist and started going every week. Talking to someone who had no connection to either of us, someone neutral, it helped more than I expected. I let everything out. The anger, the betrayal, that empty space she left behind. I talked about the sleepless nights, the constant overthinking, how I kept replaying everything in my head over and over again. And slowly, the therapist helped me understand something important. There wasn't some single moment that could have made her stay. She made the decision to leave. And that was on her, not me. That was a hard truth to accept. For the longest time, I believed something was wrong with me, that I had somehow pushed her away. But little by little, I started to see things more clearly. She had been distant for a long time. Cold. Checked out. And I ignored it, hoping things would somehow fix themselves. I convinced myself that if I just tried harder, if I held everything together, it would be enough to save the marriage. But it wasn't. And accepting that hurt. A lot. As time went on, I started taking small steps to rebuild my life. Looking back, I realized I'd lost a big part of myself in that relationship. I just hadn't noticed it until she was gone. I was always the one putting in effort, making sure she was happy, making sure everything at home was good. But now, I suddenly had all this time and no idea what to do with it. So I started going back to things I used to enjoy. I hit the gym, picked up books I'd been putting off, even started trying new recipes in the kitchen. At first, it felt strange, but slowly, it started to feel right. Work got better too. In the beginning, I was just going through the motions, doing the bare minimum to get by. But as I started feeling more like myself again, I put more energy into it. It gave me something to focus on, something I could control. And eventually, that effort paid off. I ended up getting a promotion, something I probably never would have achieved if I'd stayed stuck in that dark place. Still, there were days when it all came rushing back. Every now and then, I'd stumble across something, a photo, an old ticket stub, something small, and suddenly I'd be right back in those memories. I'd catch myself wondering where she was, if she ever thought about me, if she regretted any of it. But over time, those moments started happening less and less. And when they did, they didn't hit as hard. I got better at letting them go. I also reconnected with friends I hadn't seen much since I got married. We started doing things again, going to the driving range, hiking, just getting out and living a little. It felt good to have people around me who weren't tied to all that pain. People who helped me move forward instead of pulling me back. Looking back now, I can see that I gave way too much of myself to that relationship. I wrapped so much of my identity into being her husband. So when she left, it felt like she took a huge part of me with her. But piece by piece, I got it back. It wasn't quick, and it definitely wasn't easy. But I got there. By the end of that year, I could finally look in the mirror and see someone who wasn't defined by what she did. I wasn't just the guy whose wife left him anymore. I was someone who survived it, rebuilt, and came out stronger. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could actually live my life without her shadow hanging over me. Honestly, I was proud of that. I truly believed I'd moved on. Life felt normal again, or at least as normal as it could be after everything I'd been through. I had my routine, my friends, my work was going great. I wasn't thinking about her every single day anymore. Sure, every now and then a memory would pop up, but it wasn't consuming me like before. So when there was a knock on my door one Saturday morning, she was the last person I expected to see standing there. And then, there she was, standing right on my doorstep, holding a baby. I froze. For a second, my brain just completely shut down. It felt unreal, like I was looking at a ghost that had somehow stepped back into my life. She looked almost exactly the same, maybe a little more worn down, a bit tired around the eyes, but still her. And the look she gave me, like she honestly believed I'd be happy to see her. That hit me harder than I expected, because I really thought I was past caring. Turns out, I wasn't. Seeing her again dragged up a whole storm of emotions I thought I'd already buried for good. At first, I didn't say anything. I just stood there, staring at her. And she smiled, like nothing had ever happened. Then, without even a hint of shame, she said, "Can I come in?" The audacity. I mean, seriously, after everything she'd done, she just shows up like I'm supposed to welcome her back like nothing ever happened? But I kept myself in check. I told her straight, "No, you can stay right there and explain." There was no way I was letting her inside. That house was mine now, my space, the one place I'd rebuilt after she destroyed everything. She looked a little surprised, like she wasn't expecting that response, but she stayed put and jumped right into her story. She started with, "I know this is probably a shock, but I came back to explain everything." And the crazy part? She actually looked hopeful, like she genuinely believed I'd want to hear her out. I was torn between laughing in her face and just slamming the door. But curiosity got the better of me. I needed to hear it, whatever excuse she thought could justify disappearing the way she did. So I let her talk. She went on about how leaving me had been a mistake. Said she realized she'd lost the best thing that ever happened to her. Her words, not mine. She claimed she'd spent a lot of time reflecting, thinking about her life, and that after having the baby, she finally understood what truly mattered. Apparently, what mattered was showing up unannounced at my door after vanishing for years. And then she looked down at the baby and said, "This is our second chance." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Our second chance. Like this kid was supposed to magically reset everything. Like we could just pick up where we left off. I kept my face neutral, but inside, I was boiling. She kept going, saying she wanted us to be a family again, that she'd made a terrible mistake, but now we could start over, just the three of us. That's when I finally asked the question that had been eating me alive since the moment she showed up. "Why did you leave?" I kept my voice steady, but it wasn't easy. I'd spent years tearing myself apart trying to understand, running through every possible reason in my head. Now she was here, and I needed to hear it from her. She hesitated, looked down at her feet like she suddenly felt ashamed. But eventually she said it. Or at least, what I assume was the truth. She told me she left because she wanted a child. And since I couldn't give her one, she found someone who could. Just like that. She said it so casually, like it wasn't a big deal. Like she hadn't completely shattered my life. Like I was supposed to just nod and accept it. Then she added that the guy she left with didn't stick around. But by that point, she already had the baby, and realized she wanted me back. Simple as that. I stood there for a second, just processing it. She had walked out on me, ran off with another man, had his child, and now she expected me to just take her back like nothing happened. So I said it out loud. "So let me get this straight. You left me, found someone else, had his kid, and now you think you can come back and pretend none of this ever happened?" She started crying, said she was sorry, said she made a huge mistake. But honestly, it didn't move me at all. She kept going on about how she realized I was the one she truly loved, how we were meant to be together. I had to fight not to laugh. It sounded ridiculous. This wasn't love. This was desperation. And you could see it all over her face. Then she tried flipping it around, playing the victim, talking about how hard it had been raising a child on her own, how difficult her life had been. Like her situation wasn't the direct result of her own choices. She said she needed my support, that this time, she was ready to make things work. And all I could think was, who does she think I am? I stood there, listening, but at that point, I was done. I told her straight. "Look, you made your choice a long time ago. Now you have to live with it. There's no second chance here." She looked stunned, like it had never even crossed her mind that I might say no. Like she really believed she could just walk back into my life whenever it was convenient for her. And then she got angry. Her whole tone shifted. She started yelling, saying I was being selfish, that I owed her a chance to fix things. She even said that if she wanted to, she could have divorced me back then and taken half of everything. Then she brought up the house, said it should still be hers. That's when it all clicked. Her true colors were right there, out in the open. And honestly, I felt relief. For the first time, I was seeing her clearly. I didn't argue, didn't raise my voice. I just looked at her and said, "We're done. You wanted a different life. Now you have it. This isn't my responsibility anymore." And with that, I shut the door in her face, cut her off completely. As I stood there, listening to her muffled shouting on the other side, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. She could knock, yell, cry, whatever she wanted. But I knew one thing for sure. I was never letting her back in. The woman I loved, the one I married, she was gone. And in her place was a stranger who thought she could come back and pick up the pieces whenever it suited her. I walked away from the door and sat down, feeling lighter than I had in a long time. For a moment, I thought that was it. I figured she'd get the message and leave. But of course, it wasn't that simple. Instead, she started pounding on the door, yelling even louder. I couldn't believe it. There I was, in the one place I'd rebuilt for myself, and she still had the nerve to stand outside demanding my attention. At first, I thought about just ignoring her. Let her yell until she got tired. But then, I got curious again. I wanted to hear what excuse she'd come up with this time. So I opened the door, just a crack. Enough to show I was listening, but not enough to let her in. She looked shocked, like she'd just been slapped. Probably because I wasn't reacting the way she expected. Then she launched into another speech, talking about how she was willing to forgive me for slamming the door on her. Like we were just having some normal argument, not dealing with the fact that she abandoned me for years. She kept going on about how we could make things work if we both just tried. That's when I lost it. I actually laughed. I couldn't help it. The nerve of this woman was unreal. Her face immediately turned red with anger, like I was supposed to feel guilty for not taking her seriously. So I told her plainly, "You left. You had your chance, and you threw it away. I'm not going to pretend none of that happened just because you feel like it now." And just like that, she snapped. Her voice got louder, sharper. "You don't understand how hard it was for me," she said. She kept going, talking about how lost she'd been after leaving, how she didn't realize what she had until it was too late. But I wasn't buying any of it. I told her straight. Leaving wasn't some accident. It was a decision. She planned it. She lied about it. And then she followed through with it. So whatever regret she felt now, it didn't mean a thing. And that's when she snapped. Just like that, the whole act dropped. The sad voice, the remorse, it was gone. Her tone flipped completely, and suddenly she was going off on me, saying I was being unfair, that I didn't even have the decency to give her another chance. Then she said something that honestly stunned me. She told me, if I wanted to, I could have taken everything from you back then. I could have taken half of everything you own. I just stood there, staring at her. This woman, who walked out on me without a word, was now acting like I owed her something, because she didn't destroy me financially. Like she deserved credit for not being worse. I shook my head and said, so what? I'm supposed to be grateful? Grateful you only abandoned me and didn't take my stuff too? She just stared at me, her face twisted between anger and something else, maybe desperation, maybe guilt. But honestly, by that point, I didn't care anymore. I was done. All those years I spent blaming myself, questioning everything, wondering if I'd somehow caused her to leave. They disappeared right then and there. For the first time, I saw her clearly, and it felt like a weight I'd been carrying for years just lifted off my shoulders. But she still wasn't finished. She started pacing back and forth on my porch, ranting about how I'd never find anyone like her, how I'd regret not giving her another chance. She actually tried to make it seem like I was the one losing something by turning her away. It was insane. Here she was, the one who wrecked everything we had, and somehow, in her mind, I was supposed to be begging her to stay. When she realized I wasn't going to budge, she got louder, more aggressive. Then she tried to twist it all around. She claimed I was the reason she left. Said if I had been more understanding about the whole situation with kids, none of this would have happened. According to her logic, because I couldn't give her a child, I had failed as a husband. And that somehow justified her running off to have one with someone else. Honestly, the mental gymnastics were impressive. I couldn't believe she was actually trying to put that on me. So I shut it down. I told her, look, if you wanted a child that badly, you could have just been honest with me. You didn't have to lie to my face and pretend everything was fine while planning your way out. She didn't have a response. Just stood there, staring at me like she'd been hit. But I didn't give her time to recover. I kept going. You made that choice. Nobody forced you. And now you have to live with it. That's not my problem. Then she tried one last move. Her expression softened again, switching right back to that sad, pleading look. She told me to think about the child. Said I was being unfair by turning my back on him. She held that baby in her arms like it was some kind of leverage, like I was supposed to feel guilty. Like I was the bad guy in all this. But I wasn't falling for it. I looked her dead in the eyes and said, I don't know that child. I have nothing to do with him. He's not mine. And neither are you. And that was it. I could see it finally sink in. The moment she realized I wasn't going to change my mind. The anger in her face started to fade, replaced by something else, maybe regret, maybe frustration. But it didn't matter. To me, she was just a stranger now. A stranger who thought she could walk all over me, and then expect me to thank her for it. She stood there for a few more seconds, like she was waiting for me to call her back, to change my mind. But I didn't say a word. I just watched as it finally hit her that I meant everything I said. Then, without another glance, I shut the door. And this time, I didn't wait to hear her knock again. I already knew. I'd made my decision, and there was no going back. I walked away from the door and sat down, and for the first time in a long time, I felt something I didn't expect. Relief. It felt like I'd finally won. She had spent years thinking she could come back and manipulate her way into my life again. But it was over. I was free. There wasn't going to be any second chance. Not for her. Not for us. She was just a memory now, one I could finally leave where it belonged. In the past. After all those years of guilt, confusion, and pain, I could finally breathe again. And honestly, it felt good. The moment I closed that door on her, this strange calm just settled over me. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't sad. I wasn't even shocked. It was like all the energy I'd spent on her for years, the regret, the guilt, the constant wondering, just disappeared. Just like that. I finally had closure. The kind I didn't even realize I needed. And for the first time, I was ready to move forward. For real this time. It was over. But of course, life doesn't always wrap things up that neatly. A few days later, I got a text from her mom. She was apologizing. Said she was ashamed of how her daughter handled everything. Told me she'd tried to talk some sense into her. But clearly, it didn't work. Her mom was a genuinely good person. She'd been there for me after everything fell apart, helped me more than she ever had to. And I could tell she was truly upset about the whole situation. I didn't blame her for any of it. But at the same time, I wasn't about to get pulled back into that mess. So I kept it simple. I replied with a polite, thanks for checking in, and left it at that. I wasn't going to go into details. I wasn't going to explain myself. She understood enough to know where things stood. It was over. Over the next few weeks, I started hearing bits and pieces about what was going on with her, mostly through mutual friends and the occasional thing on social media. From what I gathered, she'd moved back in with her parents. And things weren't exactly going well. The guy she left me for, the father of her child, was completely out of the picture. He'd bailed. Just walked away like he was never planning to stick around in the first place. So now she was on her own, trying to figure everything out. And the truth is, she'd burned just about every bridge she had. There weren't many people left willing to help her. Her old friends, the same ones who supported me when she disappeared, had no sympathy for her. They'd moved on with their lives and didn't want to get dragged back into her drama. Honestly, I couldn't blame them. Even her parents weren't thrilled. They weren't in a great financial position to support both her and a baby. I only knew that because, not long after her mom texted me, I got a call from her dad. I almost ignored it. But curiosity got the better of me. He was polite, but straight to the point. Said they were struggling financially, and then started hinting that maybe I could help out. He said things like, "We know you cared about her once," and kept bringing up the baby, talking about how hard things had gotten for them. I listened, stayed respectful, but when he started suggesting that she just needed a little support to get back on her feet, I almost laughed. Not out loud, but you get the idea. I told him, as calmly as I could, that his daughter made her choices, and I wasn't in any position or mindset to help her now. He didn't argue, didn't push. I think he understood. After that, something strange started happening. People I hadn't heard from in years started reaching out. Some of her friends tried the guilt angle, said she was struggling, that she was going through a really hard time, that maybe I could find it in myself to give her another chance. One of them even suggested that the kid needed a father figure and that I shouldn't let my bitterness get in the way. That one really got me. But I didn't budge, not even a little. I wasn't going to let anyone make me feel guilty for finally choosing myself. For years, I gave everything I had to that relationship, and she threw it away. The least she could do now was take responsibility for her own decisions, not expect me to come in and fix things for her. Over time, the calls slowed down. The messages stopped. And eventually, everything went quiet. It was like people finally understood. I wasn't going back. I had moved on. And that's when something shifted. That's when the real peace set in. My life felt calm, normal, in a way it hadn't felt in years. I had my routines, my friends, my work. It wasn't some flashy, perfect life, but it was mine. And I built it back up on my own terms. The funny thing is, I started enjoying the little things again. Stuff I used to overlook. Going for walks. Cooking my own meals. Reading books I'd been putting off forever. There was something freeing about it. For once, I wasn't living for someone else. I wasn't worried about meeting anyone's expectations or keeping anyone happy. I was just living, and it felt right. Like I was finally getting myself back, piece by piece. Every now and then, I'd run into someone who knew both of us. They'd ask, "Hey, whatever happened with her?" I'd give a short, polite answer and move on. Not because I was hiding anything, but because I didn't feel the need to relive it anymore. That chapter was closed, and I'd learned how to leave it that way. As for her, last I heard, things still weren't going well. She couldn't hold down a steady job, kept bouncing between her parents' place and crashing on friends' couches when she wore out her welcome. Every once in a while, someone would message me, people I barely even talked to anymore. They'd tell me she was asking around for help, trying to get support from anyone who'd listen. Some even hinted that she still thought I might change my mind, that maybe I'd come around and step in as a father for her kid. But that was never going to happen. I'd spent too much time rebuilding my life to even consider going back. I wasn't going to be her safety net. I wasn't going to be the guy who picks up the pieces just because her plan didn't work out. That part of my life was over, and nothing was going to pull me back into it. In the end, I got the closure I needed. She made her choices, and now she's living with them. And me? I'm finally free. Not just on the surface, but really, truly free. In a way I hadn't felt since the day she walked out. I stopped letting her shadow hang over my life. I moved on. And now, I'm content. Not in some loud, over-the-top kind of way. Just quietly, peacefully content. And honestly, that's more than enough.